All
Let's
right.
go.
Yeah. Welcome to the Battery Podcast with your hosts, Joe
We're still working on
Beimel
this.
and Brent Dean.
All
Yeah. Sweet.
right. We'll figure
All
that
right.
one out. Be like an intro.
So, yeah, for sure. So I think this week we want to talk probably about like recruiting. There's a lot of things that go on with that. I know this is something that um, I don't know if I'd call it close to your heart, but I think one, you're really good at it. You help a lot of our guys. And like I've said in past, one of our past episodes, is you just have like this Rolodex of contacts. It's pretty crazy. So anybody who trains with us, my big thing is if you come train with us, you put in the work. Obviously, if you train with us, you're going to get better and we'll find you a place to play. I mean, it's really that simple, but it's up to the athlete to put the work in, get better, get to where, if they want to be a D1 player, D2, they want to play professionally, they have to have a certain level of skill. If you don't have that level of skill, we're not going to be like, hey, UCLA, how about you sign this guy? And then they take our word for it. They show up and they're throwing 78 and getting waffled all over the freaking yard. But I think the recruiting side is something, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is something you're pretty passionate about. So what, just kind of explain the process that you've seen over the years with the guys that train with us, with the guys who have, that they have that chance to either play at the highest level of college, get drafted, or even if, there's nothing wrong with going the JUCO route. We both did it. We've talked about that before. NAIA, D2, D3. Just playing college baseball is a big deal, but what do you see that stands out the most with the guys that have the most success and are getting those opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the recruiting world has just changed so much over the last few years, and especially the last 10 years with the way that data is being integrated and valued, the way that social media has been playing a part of the visibility, where guys don't really necessarily have to go to all these big tournaments and do travel ball through high school or even college summer ball. The necessity of it to get drafted isn't as valued as maybe people think it is. You obviously, if you're trying to go pro ball, you do want to have as a hitter some at bats with wood bats and you want to have some numbers that translate. But I'd say one of the things that really does resonate with recruiting and scouting is you kind of have to have a track record of proving that you are who you're saying you are. You can't just have one cover letter, one video of yourself throwing 90 or hitting a home run. It has to be months or years of that level of metric, that data, you're being cross-checked, getting eyes on you. So I think that's one thing that sorry, did it cut out for a second? I got a DND
It did cut out
issue.
for a second.
Okay. Yeah, let me do that
It could
really
be
quick.
on my end. Could be on my end. Grayson's downstairs playing video games, so he might be
It's all
taking up
good.
all the bandwidth.
No, I think I had wait, where'd you go? There we go. All right, we're back. So keeping that thought going, having that track record of just proving who you are and that you are who you say you are. Because we'll get a guy throws 90 one time, has a video, but it's like 3 pitches. Well, hey, that's great. That'll actually turn some heads. It'll start a conversation. Now to actually have some validity or some substance to that on a college recruiting side or a D1, or not D1, a pro level, you have to have years of that information. And that's what's helped our guys is being able to have the consistency when they're in here, throwing their bullpens, doing their hitting, having their lifting, is we can show that the kid has repeated the things that they're looking for, or at least has a level of consistency that someone's interested in. There's a lot of misunderstanding as far as how the recruiting world really works. And I mean, we'll just stick with the D1 level. We're kind of in the heart of this contact period now where coaches can actively go out and look at guys. Athletes can come onto the campus. They can have like off campus conversations. They can pursue all the juniors, of course. That's something that I've found that a lot of people just don't really understand, that there's a quiet period, a dead period, an active period where you have to understand if there's value to you going to camps, if there isn't, when you should be reaching out to people or when it's maybe too late or too early. And the one thing that really resonates with something that can be in control of the athlete and the family of the person that's looking for that opportunity is consistency. They have training, they're working on their metrics, they're working on their just their ability to play. I was talking with a pro scout today. He's in the facility watching some of our guys, and he was talking about how short that window really becomes on a pro level. That's something I'm sure you have a
Mhm.
ton of insight on with the scouting side. Haven't been a free agent for several years, like looking for opportunities through spring training. But he was saying when they're turning guys in now, if they don't have 6 to 12 months worth of data, and if the conversation is, hey, this might take a guy over 2 years to be big league ready, it's kind of a non-starter. They're like, well, it's just not worth it. We can't take that big of a risk on an athlete that either doesn't show consistency, they haven't had the metrics really playing in their favor, they haven't had a level of success, or it's just light. Like they're 88, they're 89, they've touched a 91 before, but every time they see them, it's like just under the metrics that they're looking for. There's so many ways we
Right.
can go with this conversation, but yeah, definitely I feel passionate about helping our guys, especially the ones that train with us. And that's something I had no idea about. And we have such a wide reach with D1 colleges, with local junior colleges, with pro scouting, with independent teams, that it's easy for us to be transparent and objective with the information because we kind of know what people are looking for, or we have that communication with them as far as what kind of mentality or makeup they're looking for outside of just the playing numbers and the experience and the success. But it's something that is super rewarding to be able to connect the dots with someone that maybe they weren't even aware of. Like, for example, we had one call with Tulane today, and I don't think any kids from Southern California are really thinking about Tulane unless it's already been someone that's from their school or from their network that's gone there. Or they have a travel ball coach that's from that area. So it's cool to be able to widen people's horizons as far as what they're looking at. And it's not just local USC, UCLA, Long Beach, Fullerton, Pepperdine, some of these local schools that they've already been aware of.
Data is just, you have to have it now, whether you agree with that or not. Used to just be scout shows up, sees you throw, he likes you, maybe brings in a cross checker or something like that. College coach or recruiter sees you, he likes you, maybe talks to the head coach, tries to get you in there for everybody to see him, or to see you. And it's just a different world now. I think on the college side, it hasn't reached as quite the way it is in pro ball. But now, like, there's only 20 rounds, of the draft. So they're not taking a risk on somebody that they just saw maybe at a D3 that pitched in a tournament, when they can go get a guy from LSU or Georgia or something and get their TrackMan data. And I've seen that, recently with kids that we've trained, at the D3 level, where they're pitching in games. They're not even getting radar readings. They're just out there throwing. And some of these kids, they want an opportunity to play professionally. And it is so hard to get that opportunity out of there if you have nothing. It's just like you have a stat line. That's it, and that's where training with us, they can get some of that data. But then again, they're not getting in-game data, which really means a lot for one, because I'm one of these guys where if I throw a bullpen, my numbers just aren't going to be as good as they are in game. It's just not going to happen. You don't have that adrenaline. Things change, and it's really hard to get up and throw even live at bats in like a facility in, the middle of January when it's 10 degrees outside. But colleges are starting to go that way as well, but I don't think they're quite there yet as far as the data stuff with in comparison to the pro side. But yeah, I mean, as far as opportunities, it's just awesome that guys out there, guys in Texas, just have that opportunity to be able to one train with us and start put up numbers, and we can just be like, hey, UCLA, hey, Tulane, hey, all these different schools, like we've got this guy. I think he'd be a good fit for you. And whether they want to use that or not, it just opens up a lot of doors. And even, with Lucas Bauer coming, from around my hometown in St. Mary's, he never would have had the opportunity or the opportunities that he's going to have from just coming out there, going to JUCO, going to Harbor, and training with us. If he would have stayed back here, he was at, a small school, Allegheny College up in Meadville, Pennsylvania, but he would have stayed around here, just that stuff wouldn't happen, so it's pretty awesome. And I get pumped about it as well when, those guys are able to get those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something you mentioned is finding a good fit for the athletes. And obviously, we want to open up some opportunities for just bigger eyes or more eyes on the athletes that we think have the ability. But that's kind of the trap for some of the parents and even the athletes is they have this perception of they'll look at the top 25 teams in the country, and that's usually where they want to go. They want to go to a Texas or an LSU or UCLA. But understanding what those programs look for, what they value, how much metrics are important to them with making that decision versus just the makeup side and what type of academic requirements they need. There's a lot of different variables that come into place to finding a good fit. And obviously, you want visibility. You want to be seen. I learned this too late in my recruiting options for when I was playing. But you need to have somewhere where you understand your academics, your what am I thinking of? The financial requirements, the college experience you're looking for, and then also your opportunity to play and develop. So if you're trying to play
Right.
pro ball and you're at a program that isn't going to develop you, but you don't really have an option and maybe you're not going to play that much, it's probably not a good fit if you're trying to get better, if you're trying to go to the next level. And so this is a conversation where there's no perfect answer for everyone. And that's why it's always something that has to be nurtured, reevaluated, repositioned, with just what that recruiting list looks like, what the family and the athlete is looking for. And I feel like we've done a really good job trying to play that matchmaker for athletes to programs, just understanding the variables and they don't get caught into the rat race of
Oh, shit. Lost you again. You're there? We'll be cutting this part out. Are you there? Are you there?
I'm back.
You're back. There he is.
Here we go. Still having technical issues. Yeah, it just completely dropped. So you can see we're still amateurs at this.
Was that on your side or my side?
But I don't know, but the app just shut
You know
down.
what? Let me,
so I'm assuming it's my side.
Yeah, hold on. Let me see. Let me just yell down to Grace and tell him to get off the video games for the next 30 minutes or so. Hold on real quick.
Minecraft needs to take a break for a second.
Yeah,
All
we'll
good.
cut this part out. All right, we'll see if that works.
Well, yeah, let's just try it again.
Yeah, but yeah, good points there as far as on the stuff on the recruiting side. And I think parents get really wrapped up in showcases and all these different things, and they think like one showcase is going to get their kid exposure, or the player thinks like, oh, if I go to this showcase, I'm going to get a bunch of college offers, and it's not even close to being the case. I've watched kids go to these showcases, and it's like they'll put up numbers, and then the place puts it on their website where they topped out at 88 miles an hour, or their exit velocity was 97 miles an hour, or whatever. And they think that's going to, like, somebody's going to see that, some college, and some colleges might, but they think, some big college like Vanderbilt or LSU or UCLA is going to see that website and go, oh my gosh, we got to get this guy. And in reality, that's usually not the case. They're going to go by what your volume of work is, as a player at the high school level. going to somewhere like us where we can kind of vouch for them and go like, hey, this kid's working hard. He's in here every day. Those are the kind of guys they want. They're not looking for somebody who popped a 91 at a showcase in January indoors, on a turf mound. And that's it. It just puts their, hey, your top is right here. So I think that's just kind of a misconception. And obviously, those places do that because there's a lot of money involved. I mean, a lot of money. When you look at some of these showcases, you're spending $300, at least, sometimes more, just to go record some numbers, and I always ask the kids, I'm always like, hey, are there going to be college coaches there when you do that? No. I'm like, okay, well, who's going to be there? Like, well, I don't think anybody will be there, but they're just going to record the numbers and then put them on their website. And I'm like, well, that doesn't do anything, you know? And then on the other hand, a lot of times you do have some of the colleges will have their camps and have their own showcases, and the head coach isn't there or anyone making the decisions isn't there. And that's another way that they can make money. So, what's your advice on that kind of thing with parents and athletes alike? Where how do they pick and choose? Should they do this type of thing? Because I feel like it's just garbage. I just think it's a waste of time, a
Yeah.
waste of money. But do you think there are certain things that they should do in that aspect?
If you're a high school athlete, here's the thing you need to understand. There's a handful of different areas that you need to be consistently filling to get a high D1 level program to pay attention to you. First, you have to have success. You have to be on the field, doing well, hitting well, throwing well, running well, whatever it is that's going to turn someone's eye. Second, you
Yeah.
have to have a track record of that. So you have to have the data, or you have to have multiple years of that, or you're playing against high level competition. You've been on varsity for 2 or 3 seasons. Then you also need someone that can vouch for it. So if it's a program like ours where we can account for, their makeup, their consistency, validating that the numbers are accurate, giving some projection based off of our trust of our evaluation skills, or if it's an agent or an advisor, some high level recruiting program or travel ball program that can vouch for someone that has that trust with those programs, that's where a lot of parents and athletes make the mistake of just going all in one lane and not understanding that they need to have the ability to evaluate how the entire picture looks. And to not make it too difficult to understand that process, you just need to make sure that there's some perspective on what the value is with that time, that money, those resources, and if the timing of the visibility is actually beneficial. I think you'd mentioned it before with like, you can overexpose yourself. You go into a showcase, the first reason you should ask is why, or that's the first question. Well, why are you going to this? You're hoping to get seen by the team, or you're just trying to learn the experience, the environment, or that's the program that you want to get a scholarship from. Circumstances that you have to consider. Like if you're throwing 82 miles an hour and you're a junior, it's probably not worth it unless it's that high academic school like a MIT, a D3, and they'll take you if you kind of pass the eye test because you're going to get in academically, and that's kind of what you're going for. But we have a lot of athletes that will take an extended break from their development. They start making progress, they understand they're getting there, and then they stop to go showcase themselves all summer, and they're throwing 82 to 84, or they're a little light in the bat, and they don't have the exit velocity or the physicality that someone's looking for. And then all of a sudden they've lost a huge window, 3, 4, or 5 months. And then they get back into season and they don't have the time to really make strong adaptations. And now all of a sudden they're potentially out of that class. They're a junior college projection or mid-major D2 or D3. So the
Yeah.
overwhelming consensus is you just have to have someone that can help navigate what's best with this time. Is my son ready? Am I ready? Are you looking for D1 pro ball? And D2, JC, and who can actually give me real feedback if that's actually going to be worth it right now. So that's the dynamic that it's always changing, like what coaches are looking for, what they value. But the overwhelming consensus is that you have to have someone help you just evaluate that.
Yeah. I mean, the overexposure thing is gigantic because we've seen it a bunch of times, and there are a couple things here where we see even at the pro level, we have our pro day or whatever, and we'll have guys that we have to turn away because they're just like they want to throw and they've been working hard, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine, but they're not at the level that somebody is going to come and sign you. And same thing with overexposure. Only thing that can happen is something bad. So what happens usually is, you get a guy and he's all pumped, he wants to throw him pro day, and if you let him, if you let somebody throw an 85, 86 into pro day, it just makes your pro day shit. It's just like, well, now the scouts don't want to show up. They're just like, well, we don't want to come watch a bunch of guys throw 85. But on the side of the athlete, what happens is, as a scout comes in there, he writes a report on you and says, hey, this guy is 85, 86. He's got this changeup. He's got this breaking ball, whatever. And now say you start throwing 95 or 95 plus, and now you go, hey, this guy's throwing 95 now. You should come watch him. And they go, no, we've already seen him. We have a report on him. He's
Already seen him.
85. Like we're not falling for that again. So it really deters the scouts to come watch you when they come and see you. Like that's why when we do that, we don't bring in, colleges to watch a guy. We don't bring in pro scouts to watch a guy if they're not ready. One, that affects our reputation, and that's at the end of the day, that's all we have is our reputation. And if that falters, then, we're kind of screwed. And then we won't be able to get, the people who deserve it in the spots where they should be. If we take advantage of those connections and just send somebody that shouldn't be there. So there's that, but then it really just screws over the current athlete because they're gonna, you see it all the time. Somebody on the internet, they get signed. We saw this back in COVID 2020. Guys were throwing on the internet, and I've heard rumors where guys are throwing like light balls and getting signed, and then they show up to like spring training, and the teams are like, "Wait a second, this guy doesn't throw 99." Like, what is happening right now? And that only lasts for so long. And I've had even guys who train with me remote do that shit to me, and it freaking pissed me off. Where they'd throw they'd be like, "Oh, I hit 94 today," and I'm like, "What? Yeah, that's awesome." And I'm like, send me video. And then they send me the video, and I look in the video. I'm like, you mean that's a 3-ounce plyo ball? What are you talking about? You didn't hit 93? Get the hell out of here. Don't waste my time with that shit. So it happens more than you think. So that's why, these teams, I'm sure a lot of them have fell for things like that. And then that's why they require so much data now. But same on the college side, where obviously we talk about this all the time. If you have nothing to showcase, one, don't go to a showcase. You're not going to get exposure. You're not going to get put on the radar because you showed up to a tournament, or you showed up to a showcase and you're throwing 72. Like, no one wants to see that. Doesn't matter. It's never going to matter. No matter how hard you want it to, no one cares. You're getting on no one's radar. You have to be at the level, there are people, they always say, oh, well, Greg Maddux didn't throw. Get out of here with that shit. Like, Greg Maddux, one, he threw hard when he was younger. That got him in the door, but his command and his stuff is off the charts. Like, you don't have that command, you don't have that stuff, and you sure don't have the velocity. So don't compare yourself to Greg Maddux. So you don't want to have to be an outlier either, right? Like, yes, outliers are out there. There are guys who throw 80 miles an hour and can get people out, but there aren't many of them. There are a lot more guys getting opportunities that throw 95. So do you want to have the best chance to get there, or do you want to just be like, I mean, it's already hard enough to make it, less than 1%, right? Like less than 0.1%. So you have to be putting up the numbers. You have to have the data to get into those scenarios, get into those situations where you have that opportunity. And you can train for years and years and years, and you still might not be able to do it, but you sure as hell aren't going to do it if you don't, get in the gym and you don't train, you don't work on your mechanics, you don't work on your health, your diet, your recovery, all of those things. Um, but in that world, do you think that is one of the largest mistakes made for recruiting? Is just the showcase culture, the tournament culture, and we see this as well, where kids are going to tournaments every single weekend. Um, and I do think that's where overexposure comes in, because you see a kid, you see him once, you see him twice, he's really good, and then you see him third time, fourth time, fifth time, and now they're not as good as the two times before, and you're like, instead of being like, man, that kid was good, let's stay on him, let's follow up with him. But now you get to see him 7, 8 times, and now you're like, well, I guess he's not as good as we thought he was.
Yeah, I think it makes me think of a few different scenarios that actually create that dynamic where it's perpetuated from travel ball. So there's kids that they played year round every weekend since they were 6, 7 years old. The biggest thing for them is understanding not necessarily exposure or overexposure, but overuse. Some of them have never really developed enough. So they come to us with this slew of injuries or weaknesses or risks for injuries because they've never really taken the time to develop the structures they need to play at the next level. They're fundamentally okay.
Yeah.
Maybe they've even been overcoached and they've had too many lessons. So they're kind of getting pigeonholed a little bit with their development. They're not playing multiple sports. They're not getting just the experience of playing. They're also getting very regimented lessons, which end up not necessarily being the best routine for them. But I'll tell you this, here's the 3 most common mistakes I see in the recruiting side. The first one is just never getting objective feedback or data. Period. The second one is the time management in the windows of that recruiting or their development, or both. And then the third one is, shockingly for me, complacency with success. So you get an athlete that's one of the better athletes on their team, or they've already committed and they stop, or they're like, hey, this is good enough, I'm just going to kind of coast into my next opportunity with this. And they realize, like, hey, I'm behind where I was before on my team. One of the premier pitchers, premier hitters, the better athletes. Now you're kind of in the middle or at the end. But just to dive into that really quickly, the very first thing is kind of what you talked about, like the objective evaluation. You can't go into a showcase and throw 70, but if someone tells you that, like, hey, why are you going to a showcase? We should probably take the next 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 months developing, building the tools that you're trying to highlight. And usually pretty reasonable parents or athletes will agree. Like, okay, yeah, you're right. I probably should miss that Stanford showcase and actually have something that's going to give them some interest in me. The second thing is the time management of it. That's the probably most important thing that we try to reinforce with our athletes is value in their time. They think, I'm only going to train in the summer, but I'm also going to showcase. And usually that's such a deadly mistake for them because they aren't really pushing themselves that hard in their development, and they're trying to go showcase, and they might have a good one or an average one or a bad one, but then it's not repeatable. And then they start training maybe in the fall, but they have school, they have new routines, they're trying to manage, maybe like they're starting to drive. So like the time management of practice, after practice, academics, personal life. And that becomes a time management issue where they're just not really filling the buckets properly that are going to help them get to that next level. And always goes back to having that recurring objective feedback. But like I said, that last one, which is one of the most common that we've seen, we have guys that will commit D1, best they've ever been, or get a pro contract, and then they slow down or they stop doing the things that they had been doing and think, oh, grass is greener on the other side. Now that I'm here, I'm going to try this other program and see if that catapults me. where now they have no foundation to rely back on and no consistency of their data or the objective understanding of where that athlete is or that relationship with a trainer. And then they regress and then they just flip a coin on the next program they go to. And so that's kind of one of the
Mhm.
drawbacks with social media and with all the people, the information that are available is it's easy to highlight something on social media and a kid sees it and goes, oh, well, if I've been 89, 90 here, this guy's going to take me to 95. And sometimes we see it happen like quick translation into success, but then they lose it and they can't find it again, or they're up and down, or they have no mental game because they haven't had a solidified routine or someone that can actually build them up on the nuance of the things that are going to help them be successful in baseball rather than just training. It's like you can hit, you can throw, you have some skill, but you can't play baseball at the next level because you haven't actually developed that.
Yeah, I
Getting
mean,
a ton of
I
feedback
can
again.
think of so many. What's that?
It's okay. It stopped
No,
now,
you
but
there?
I'm getting feedback again. We'll figure out the audio stuff again.
Yeah, shit. Um, yeah, I mean, I can think of like a handful of guys where they've trained with us. They've gone D1 and then they go to their school for like the fall or whatever, and or they're in the summer about to go into the fall, and then the school gives them like a program that they want them to follow. And then they just stop doing every single thing that made them successful. And they're like, okay, I'm going to do what the school wants. And we kind of look at it and go, oh man, that's just not very good. You know, like that lifting program isn't very good. You can tell like the strength coach who gives the stuff to the football team like wrote that. You know what I mean? And then the throwing program, it's like, well, they don't do any plyo balls, or they don't do a good warm up, or you know, their arm care program isn't very good. And then they start doing that. And now all of a sudden, like it's a summer before they go into their first fall as a freshman, and they're just not as good as they were their senior year of high school. And it's super disappointing where you're like, you did not need to change all that. One, they're like, well, I got to do it. My college wants me to. And it's like, well, they're not going to know. Like, why would you change every single thing you did that made you successful? And why would the school want you to do that? You know? So that's where even training with us, it's an advantage where we can reach out to those coaches and let them know what the athlete is doing, you know, so we're on the same page. Because at the end of the day, you know, and we've talked to the guys at LMU, you know, at the ABCA, we've got a bunch of their guys. Well, they just came and took a bunch of guys that train with us. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're both in the business of helping guys get better at baseball. Like they want them to be good. They want to win, you know, at their colleges. We want them to do the same. You know, that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're not doing it because we have these giant egos and we go like, oh, look what we did. Like, look how we made this guy. And that's never been our positioning. And there are a lot of programs out there that do that. And they go, look, we have 20 D1 players and we've got 30 draft picks and all this stuff. And it's just like, that's so tacky to me because at the end of the day, the athlete did the work. You can provide, you know, you can provide the programs, you can provide whatever you want to help. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter any of that unless the athlete does it. And they have to put the work in, and they deserve all of the credit because they're the ones doing it. They're the ones who came to you in the first place. They're the ones who have the talent. They're the ones who are sacrificing their time, their bodies, you know, sometimes way more than that. So uh, that's always one pet peeve of mine is when programs do that and they just take all the credit for somebody's success. And I had coaches like that over the years too that did
Yeah.
that with me. Like, you know, they're trying to climb the ranks in the minor leagues and they'll be like, oh, I taught Joe his slider. And I've heard that multiple times from different people where they're like, oh yeah, I heard so and so like taught you your slider. I'll be like, what? What are you talking about? You know, like I've been throwing that slider since I was in college. So it's funny that that's the way things work. But, you know, getting back, I think I'm getting a little off track, but getting back to like on the recruiting side, with the showcase, with the travel ball, all of that stuff, you know, we obviously know it's big business. There are good, and I'd say there's probably some good showcases out there. I don't really know. I think we should probably do one because we could actually talk to colleges and go, hey, we're going to have this showcase. We'll send you the data. Do you want it? Okay. So I think if we did one, it would be way better than anything else that's out there rather than just here, we put it on our website. Look at this. Oh, we put it on our Instagram page. This guy threw 88, this guy threw 86, this guy threw 87. All that stuff's cool and you can share that and stuff on social media, which I guess has its place. But when you can actually go like, hey, you come to this showcase, here's the schools that we're going to send this data to if they want it. Maybe they don't want it. But we have, I say we, I mean you, because I have a few contacts here and there, and I have guys, I have D1 schools that reach out to me about certain athletes, but I'd say you have way more. So I think that'd be beneficial. But there are also great travel ball teams out there. And I think it's just navigating that, finding which ones are going to help you develop, which ones aren't going to, they're not chasing rings on the weekend. They're not chasing, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, even 15-year-old tournament wins. They're not going to sacrifice an athlete's health to win a tournament. That's just, and everyone knows it happens, it's just, and they have all these weird rules with tournaments. And we see it all the time too, where it's like, I don't think a kid under 18 years old should throw back-to-back days. In college, that's fine, whatever. But I don't think these kids should throw back-to-back days, but we've got guys who are throwing twice in one day. So they're throwing at 10 a.m. and it's like, oh, we took him out in the third inning. So he has 3 more innings to pitch tonight at like 8 o'clock. It's like, that is terrible. That's like the worst thing you can do. That doesn't even, when I pitched in the big leagues, there were times I threw both games of a doubleheader. It was very few and far between, but it did happen. And there was also 0 chance in hell that I was pitching the next day if I threw both games of doubleheader. It just takes a toll on your body. I mean, I would rather throw 5 days in a row, when I was pitching, than throw both games of a doubleheader. It's just super taxing. And it just happens every single weekend. So you've got to find, a travel ball team who's not going to do that to you if your goal is to play in college. And I would think if you're playing travel ball, you probably want to play in college. You're not just playing for fun, because you could play, little league, you can play Legion, Junior Legion, Senior Little League, whatever, the organizations are now. You can do all that for fun. So I would think your goal, if you're playing travel ball, is you do want to play somewhere in college. So you can't let these coaches and these organizations abuse you. But with that being said, I know I asked you, like, what do you think the biggest mistake is? And to go back to those, when you do have, what is a conversation you have with parents when you see, like, hey, this guy's he's playing on 7 different teams. He's playing, some of these kids play more than big leaguers do. I mean, let's be honest. It's kind of crazy. And I think you said something one time, it made me laugh, was we had a kid that was pitching and he was pitching year round. And you're like, you've thrown more innings than Clayton Kershaw this year, and it's just true because it happens. But what is usually, like, in those scenarios, what is your advice to the athlete, to the parent? And what do you think? Like, do you think they're listening? Or do you think it's something where they're just like, oh, no, the travel ball coach said this, so this is what we have to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everyone, especially these parents that maybe don't have a significant baseball background, that everyone's doing the best with the cards they're dealt and trying to make sense of the whole process. Usually that's a good discovery call or a conversation to have, is just, well, what exactly is the benefit of this, or what are you looking for? Are you looking to win? Or are you looking to develop? If it's development, you want to be in with a good program that has good systems and good coaching, but you also need individual time. And if your individual time isn't being focused on the right way because you're just doing random lessons with some guy in a park once a week with no data, with no objective goals, or no feedback on if it's actually working or not, that's where it gets very convoluted and very confusing for a lot of parents how to navigate all of these different steps because it's dynamically changing on them. So that's usually where the conversation starts. We'll go, what does he want to do? Like, how serious is he about baseball? Let's look at where their development is. Let's see how much they want to put into it. And let's see how that changes over time because sometimes the motivation is fleeting and they're super excited about it. They want to do it. They're motivated. And then maybe they had a bad grade on their test or they had a bad outing and they're just completely deterred from coming in to train. And if they have no structure or support system, it's very easy for them to regress or fall back into bad habits. But on the recruiting side, for sure, a lot of parents mistake the visibility for viability, thinking, oh, just because he got seen or he's in front of these travel ball coaches or he's on this team or he's doing this one showcase in whatever the summer next year, he'll be fine versus actually having ongoing constant conversations about the athlete with the program, with his trainers, with the development system. That's where we've seen guys get those August 1st phone calls and have a plethora of options. They have just a surplus of calls and they have so many guys calling them because it's ongoing since they were a freshman in high school or in eighth grade. And just to kind of go tangent on that for a second. For a lot of people that don't understand that first window with the D1 contact, it is August 1st going into their junior year is when D1 programs can have initial conversations and direct contact outside of, a camp or a clinic that they attended, and ongoing communication with the athlete about their recruiting status with that program. The big dead periods are basically between November and February. And then starting March 1st is when that contact period opens up again, all the way through the end of October with a variety of different quick little windows of dead period, quiet periods. That's the first thing a
Mhm.
lot of parents ask about is like, well, hey, I'm going to this camp in December. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Are they actually recruiting out of that? Or have you ever talked to them? Or why do you think this is a school that fits for you? And then so we try to navigate that process by just giving some, like I said, objective data first, time management, and then making sure that they're not getting complacent once they've actually gotten some looks on them. Yeah, this happens on a pro level, on a high school level, on a freshman level, but it happens way more often than I thought it would. So it's one of the most common things with just understanding, are the athletes using their time well, and if it doesn't fit for them, how are you going to change it? And so that's where it just always revolves back around our core philosophies of, one size doesn't fit all, and you need to have structure in a system, but that structure and system has to evolve with the athlete.
Yeah, and you bring up that point about um, where colleges can't talk to kids before. You said it was what, August 1st of their junior year or before their
Yeah,
junior year, right?
August 1st going into
Yeah.
junior
So
year, so that summer, yeah,
yeah, so it's like, and that hasn't always been the case. I think that was just recently when, like, the last couple years or something.
probably about 4 years or so now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, geez, it's been that long. But that's another thing too, where we kind of have that advantage of being like the middlemen where they can talk to us, if they like a kid or they come in, they can't necessarily talk to the parents or the athlete, but they can kind of go through us and talk to us and say like, hey, I really like this guy, and ask us questions, get some background on him. So it's one of those things too. Like that's just a huge advantage when you do train with us. If you are an underclassman, um, we can talk to those coaches for you, and we've had some of those conversations already in the past. I don't think that doesn't violate anything, right? I don't want to
Right,
put this
right.
on the
Well, it's
podcast and be
basically
like, oh,
we're
you can't
talking
say that.
about, yeah. Yeah, I get a compliance call
Like,
here from
oh
a
shit, I
director,
didn't know that. Damn
but
it.
no, it doesn't violate anything. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those situations that this is what's happening with travel ball programs and showcases. Um, every summer, June and July for sure, end of season, we get those calls from these programs that are asking about those 2028s, or basically those sophomores that are turning into juniors, and they want to know what we have on them. the data, the video, the feedback, like what their family is like, um, what their financial situation is, academic situation, all the things that maybe they haven't been able to discover outside of just seeing them once or twice or having some Twitter videos on them. So if you want to be an August 1st phone call guy, you have to have this process kind of starting early. And it doesn't have to be power D1s. It can be any program that's starting to give you a little momentum. But that's also a trap for a lot of kids because they think that if that doesn't happen, oh, they're not going to go to that school or they don't have any
Right.
options that are going to give them, a D1 level scholarship. And for many guys, it's into their junior year or even into their senior year when they finally start getting phone calls. And it's not that people aren't talking about them, it's more just people are waiting to see how they really perform consistently. Maybe they haven't had enough varsity at bats or innings, or they just don't have all the data on them yet. So those things change over time. And we've seen that that's probably for the better, where we've had kids. Get committed their freshman or sophomore year when we first started, and their senior
Yeah.
year, they're struggling a little bit, or they find out, hey, there's 5 people in your position committed to that program, and then they drop them in May. And that's a really lonely place to be. You were committed your whole high school career, and then your senior season, you get dropped. So that's kind of slowed, where
Yep.
hopefully a lot less often you're getting over commitments or over recruiting. Um, but the game has changed so much with even the transfer portal, where a lot of these kids aren't understanding how much they need to be prepared when they come in. Yes, they are going to develop, especially at programs like UCLA that likes to bring in their high school guys and develop them and get their hands on them as much as they can. They expect them to be able to contribute right away because they could go get a junior or sophomore or senior from another D1 program that has been developed, that has been getting the strength and the innings or the at bats, and they can bring them in. And that way they don't sacrifice time and development for wins. These programs, they want to win. So if you're a good freshman, great, you're going
Yeah.
to play or you're going to get opportunities. I have D&D on and I'm still getting phone calls. These telemarketers are relentless.
Jeez.
You got me?
Yeah, my D&D, I have it set up
All right.
where I don't even get notifications or anything. Like, everything is
Yeah, I
silent,
gotta
so
I
even
gotta
if I
switch that
looked at
up.
my phone, it wouldn't show anything. It would just be blank.
Yeah, that's smart.
But
Maybe I gotta switch that up. Anyways, yeah, I mean, it's just circling back on that. It's one of those situations where it kind of goes back to that mistake we talked about with complacency. You get a junior, they're committed, and we've had that. We've had that happen several times. And, bless their hearts, we hope everything works out. But then they stop doing the things that have helped them get those levels of visibility or that level of production.
yeah.
And then their senior year, they're light. And so, for example, I have a few teams I have to go basically cross check for, go get some videos on some of their commits or some of their recruits. And some of these teams, they're busy on a Friday or Saturday or a Thursday, even. They're out of town, but they want to know, hey, how's my guy doing? So I go and I'll take a look and I'll
Mhm.
take video. And if that commit was 87, 88 their junior year, and now their senior year, they're 87, 88, they start getting cold feet. They're like, hey, what did you
Yeah.
do? And a year later, you haven't changed, you haven't developed. How can I expect you to be ready to step, excuse me, to step on campus in another 6 months or 12 months and produce at a level that, especially if you're in a power D1 or any of these really good college programs in Southern California, like a Pepperdine or LMU or Fullerton that have been competitive in this area, it's really hard to break that roster as a freshman and contribute and then be able to stick with the team when they could just go shop the transfer portal or you have a whole new, recruiting class right behind you. And that stuff, it resonates with pro ball too. In the draft, you have to be really good because there's a draft every year, and even though the draft size has lowered and there's less guys getting picked up, there's less teams, but there's a shorter window to get actually developed. They want people that are going to develop and they're going to help them, but it can't be a project. It can't be, hey, this is going to be 3 or 4 years. The same thing's happening in college, even mid major teams, where they'll take a guy and he's going to get thrown in the fire and he's going to have an opportunity. But if he proves that he's not ready, it's kind of like, all right, on to the next guy because we can go shop the transfer portal this June, pick up 2 or 3 people, and we're going to win this year versus rolling the dice on this guy for the next 2 or 3.
Yeah, a couple things. I want to touch on with that is pro ball. Obviously, um, they got rid of each team got rid of, two minor league teams years ago. And then would they drop rosters? Was it 180, 180 or 160 that they're allowed to
I think
carry,
160.
between
Yeah,
all of the levels? What was it?
160. I'm pretty
Was
sure.
it 160? Yeah. So, you have not many spots, and I've heard they're trying to like lower it even more in the next coming years. So you're going to get rid of a lot of jobs in the minor leagues, and I have a way I feel about that is you had a bunch of guys bitching about not getting paid in the minor leagues, and you can say like, oh, they need to make more money, or you can say, well, they have an opportunity. The whole point is to try and get to the big leagues, and if you're banking on making money in the minor leagues, probably not going to get there anyways. But you also got to realize that everyone in the minor leagues doesn't have the opportunity to make it to the big leagues. I mean, you'd like to think that they do, but a lot of times guys are just a filler. They're a filler for a spot. So there's an A-ball team, and they may never play above A-ball. They may never play above rookie ball or double A. And I mean, you'll have some great players too, that high round picks that won't get past those levels either. So it does happen, but you know, one of those things where everybody's not equal on the minor league team. Mm. And it kind of used to be where it's, well, if you produce and you get people out as a pitcher or you get a bunch of hits, you are going to keep climbing up to the next level. I don't think that happens as much anymore. If you're not part of the plans, it's hard to get, moved up or get to the big leagues, and you're better off trying another organization or going to indie ball and developing a little bit more. But you have those scenarios where it's becoming more difficult on the pro level. But you've touched on this a little bit, but the college level with transfer portal, NIL money, it has changed things drastically as well for freshmen coming in. You see a lot of teams, they're not really looking to bring in a bunch of freshmen onto a D1 team because they just keep getting burned on these things where they don't want to bring in a freshman, take all this time, waste all this time in developing him. His freshman year, maybe he doesn't play very much or whatever. And then the kid's like, well, I'm leaving. So hits the transfer portal, leaves at the end of the year. Now they've just, like I said, they've wasted so much time. So we're seeing a lot of guys going the JUCO route, and then a team's like, hey, this guy's already put in 2 years at a JUCO. He can step in, play for us, help us win. And, the freshman, he may go like, well, I'm not playing. I'm going to go over here. Or, I'm going to go to a JUCO now, or I'm going to go to a smaller school because of an opportunity to play where probably would have been best for him to do that in the first place, or he just didn't develop like they thought he would, or wasn't doing enough as he was going into his freshman year. So there are just so many different scenarios. But now, you're not locked in. I mean, you can just go like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go over here. No, this place sucks too. Coach doesn't like me. I'm going to go over here, but on the other hand, the schools can also do that. I mean, you see it all the time. And they might be like, oh, we didn't expect to get a guy out of the transfer portal, but we did. So now you're coming in as a freshman. Too bad, buddy. We got to get rid of you. And it's like, it's that summer or something, and they can just drop you at any time with no warning. So it does go both ways, and it's not, I don't think it's an advantage to anyone. Now, I know that it works out for certain people. But I even remember years ago where the one guy, Hurd, and he's obviously in pro ball now. I don't know where he'll play this year. Thatcher Hurd, he went to UCLA and he had a great year. I don't think he started as much as he wanted to as a freshman or whatever, but then he transfers to LSU, and you're like, what? Why'd you do that? But that stuff happens. It worked out well for him, and he's obviously in pro
Yeah.
ball with the Yankees now. But, you just see so many different things, and you don't know what's going through the athlete's head or what their experience was. So And for me, I always talk about this. Um, I went to a junior college and I got drafted my freshman year. Um, didn't really pitch a whole lot my freshman year, but pitched enough, obviously. And went back my sophomore year after not signing, got drafted by the Texas Rangers. And then I just didn't pitch. And I'm like, what's going on? Just didn't have a great relationship with the coach there. And it was very bizarre, but I think if I could have hit the transfer portal or whatever, maybe I would. I don't know. It's hard to say. And maybe because I didn't go through that adversity that I had to go through in junior college and then transfer to Duquesne, maybe my career ends up completely different because I just, that was something that I feel like I had to go through. Um, and not that it, made me a better player or anything like that. I'm not that guy that's like, oh, my haters motivate me. I'm motivational. I have enough motivation myself. And I like to think my inner dialogue gives me that motivation. But, you know, it did help me learn that, yeah, you're going to run into a lot of people that just don't believe in you, don't want to see you succeed. And you've got to be able to deal with that. And how you deal with that determines a lot. And it determines how far you're going to go in this game. So, like I said, sometimes those scenarios, they work out well for the player. But I know in my scenario where I just think that just seeing that side of the game and seeing, because I always thought like, hey, I'm a nice guy. I work hard. Like I don't do anything malicious to anybody. But for some reason, I just wasn't getting the opportunity. And it was always some weird reason. But that can be on another podcast one of these days. So, what do you see like the NIL and the transfer portal? Do you see it as something that's good for college baseball? Do you see it as something bad and different? And do you see, even with guys that we've trained that have maybe transferred, have you seen it work out positively for somebody that has decided to go into the portal?
Well, here's the truth about the transfer portal. It has been super beneficial for a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys that they kind of got stuck. They're behind someone that maybe has a lot of priority, NIL. There's a first round pick at their position, and they get out and they have a good opportunity to go somewhere else. We've seen it kind of resonate even on a pro level. We had a guy in, I think, the Orioles organization doing really well. He was behind a very high prospect. He ends up getting traded over to a different organization. He's in the big leagues now. And that's
Yeah.
one of those situations where we talk about the transfer portal being a good tool, but the mistake a lot of people make is they think as soon as things don't go their way, just hop in the transfer portal. And that would absolutely wreck a lot of guys' opportunities, their experience. Even for myself, if I would have left UCLA after my junior year, gone somewhere else for my senior year, maybe it works out differently. But now you don't have that network. You don't have any loyalty to that program, to those coaches, to those other athletes that you were with. It's a tool. And it's definitely something that you have to understand if it's beneficial for you or not. And it's changing the game, like the college baseball game with, like you said, NIL and the transfer portal and just the development expectations has changed dramatically, even over the last 5 years. And that's where it's kind of crazy to see some of the travel ball programs or even facilities like ours preaching a lot of the things that we did 10 years ago that now it's like, hey, that's completely out of date. Like you guys are giving bad information and you guys are leading someone down like a pretty dead end road. But when the transfer portal started, everyone was kind of excited about the opportunity, or most people were pretty excited about the opportunity. You can go wherever someone will take you. You don't like where you're at. Like you said, the issue is sometimes a program has developed you or they put time into you with the consideration that you're our future. We have a junior, a draftable guy, or a senior right now in your position. You're a freshman or a sophomore. We're waiting till you can kind of get that option, but then they leave. And it's like that completely backfired and they may still go have success. Um, but we've even seen that change the timing of the recruiting windows where sometimes junior college guys, they have to wait a little bit longer because these D1 programs, they're recruiting guys out of high school and, of course, junior colleges, but then they shop the transfer portal too to see what they're going to get. And then if they don't get that, then they can also look at those junior college guys that should be prepared and usually have a little more priority with them versus blindly shopping in the transfer portal and having, several other programs really looking at them because that information is so available on that portal. But yeah, I think the transfer portal, like anything else, is a tool. You got to know if it's valuable or not. We see that happen even high schools, kids transferring quickly because things aren't going their way. And it's not always necessarily the best thing for them. I think having some consistency in the training and understanding the program you're in and the routines is pretty valuable to give you the ability to manage your development and not just jumping into something new and hoping it works out. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but basically the transfer portal, man, it's a whole other beast for when it comes to recruiting. One quick story, we had a guy, he was at a junior college locally, hidden probably in the 370, 380 range, doing pretty well, had decent power numbers, um, playing a premium position, and multiple teams. So you'd think, okay, that's a probably mid-major D1, or if not a high-level D1, if he has something on the tools that can really translate to that team. No one touched him until late June going into July. And so he's kind of getting antsy, right? He's done with his season. They get knocked out of playoffs. And he's coming to us asking, like, hey, what do you think I should do? Do I like just keep developing or keep working out or take a gap year? Or should I go to like camps or should I write to people? And we'd been in contact with enough schools at this point to give him some comfort with it. But he actually had to wait until after the transfer portal finished because some of these programs were still looking at who's available. And then he got shopped late. So I think the understanding of how these things work can help people have the ability to not try to play GM or try to play manager or head coach or recruiting coordinator and just focus on themselves and focus on their development and focus on being ready to play. Um, and then when the opportunity does come, then they can shop it without having to try to go pursue it. And it kind of takes away from their focus. So like anything else, like transfer portal's a tool, the plyo balls are a tool, weight training is a tool. If you don't know really what you're doing with it, it can just kind of be a distraction or just a confusing part of the game.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. Um, and it's just, our era when we played, we didn't have to deal with that. And it's just one of those things that we have to learn as we keep developing guys because we want to be the best at what we do. Very few, I don't know of any other programs that do as much as we do on the side of recruiting for our athletes, getting them signed to pro ball, all of these different things. And, it's just a benefit when you do train with our program. But last thing I want to touch on real quick, I know we're talking for a while, is something that has become very popular. And to me, I think it's absolutely terrible for players
Uh-oh.
that do this, uh, is the reclassification thing. I'm not a fan. It's becoming so popular. And I think a lot of it is parents are getting advice from colleges like, hey, you should just reclass because why wouldn't they? You know what I mean? Where, hey, if you can just pretend um, you're in eighth grade and not ninth, even though you already did eighth grade, just go back, do it again. We'll give you another year of high school. So you'll be playing high school against 18-year-olds when you're 19. And I don't know if when you were 18 and 19, if it was a big difference for you, but for me, I was so different as an 18-year-old than I was a 19-year-old. I was about 190 pounds maybe my senior year, but I was I don't know, 6 foot. I think I grew 3 inches like my freshman year of college. So got up to like 6'3". So I was just if I was playing as a 19-year-old in high school, I was a man at that point, and still obviously still a teenager, still a kid, not like I am now, but it's just I would have had such a benefit and I understand that part of it. But with that being said, I just think socially it cannot be good. I don't know if there are any studies out there, the effects of that, holding the kid back in school. Obviously, if it's for development, for education, um, that's a no brainer. But if it's development for sports, to me, I just think it's wrong. I think, it's becoming, I've had people reach out to me about it. I never recommend it. I don't care if you're a little guy and you might grow a couple inches or something like that. It's, I also grew up in pro ball where, we had Latino players lying about their age. It was rampant when I was first in pro ball. I remember a guy saying he was 18, and I think it came out he was 29. He was from the
Oh,
Dominican, had
jeez.
a young face. He was a cop or something back in the Dominican, and he ended up coming over, signing, and told him he was 18. I don't know if he took somebody else's birth certificate or what, but you have, guys lying about their age to be younger, but now we've got American kids going like purposely being older when they're done with high school. It just seems super backwards. What are your thoughts on that? And again, because I might be sitting here and I have my opinion on it or whatever. But I'm not sure. Has it worked? Have you seen it work out well for kids, or is it something that's so new that we haven't really seen the effects of it yet?
Yeah, I think we've seen it on both ends of the spectrum where for some athletes, okay, it's been a little bit beneficial because they needed some time to develop and they were kind of on that border of where their birthday probably could have pushed to the other class versus, the upper class that they were in. But I would agree with you that I think it is a big risk on the social side, like all their friends, the people they've been playing ball with their whole life. Now all of a sudden they're continuing on and they're in a new younger class with younger kids. Academically, they're not getting pushed as quickly or as hard because they're repeating some of these classes or they're in a smaller or a younger curriculum. To touch on your point, the exact same thing would have happened for me where myself, I graduated at 17. I was not physically ready to play in college at a high level. As I turned 18 and then especially at 19, I was over 200 pounds. I was able to do a lot more physically, was probably mentally a little bit more mature, a lot more mature at that point. But I capitalized on those windows at that point at 18 and 19 to develop because that's when I was really taking advantage of strength training and having better coaching and having a better understanding of how nutrition played a part of that. Where a lot of these athletes are taking that gap year or reclass year at 13, 14 years old, but then they're still doing the same things. They're not really pouring into their development, right? They're not like getting a super strict strength program. We've had a handful, we've had some where I feel like they did commit to that. That was the point of them reclassing. Is they came to us to develop and train. Whether we think it was the right decision socially or academically or not, it's still up to the family to decide. But what they are giving up is they are going to guarantee to be a older college player, which could potentially harm them when it comes to those pro opportunities. Because a lot of parents don't have that foresight to understand your development in your younger years is helpful for your college opportunities. But as a pro player, you're not really graded off of your class, you're graded off of your age. And if you're
Yeah.
22, 23 years old in college, you might be undraftable if you are not off the charts with your numbers. If you're 20, 21, or a 19-year-old or 18-year-old coming out of high school, you have a lot more leverage in those options to fast track you to try to get to that highest level, which obviously everyone wants to play in the big leagues. So it does have some viability if you're trying to just get into a college because the college game is getting older. I think it really was um, a catalyst or just an effect from the COVID years where everyone got log jammed and they had these additional years. So you have 23, 24, 25-year-old seniors in college now. And
Yeah.
I think you do need to be able to compete with those athletes, but it shouldn't always just be at the sacrifice of, the social side or just purely on the development. And I think we also think that way, and I could be wrong, but we think that way because we know with our style of program and other programs similar to ours, the development is possible even if they're in high school. You can train and play and still develop and not have to reclass and make that big rash decision and now be a 16-year-old as a freshman when you could have just still been a sophomore and you mature at your rate. And it's okay to be catching up at 16 and 17 years old versus you're young, but really everyone knows you should have been a senior. You should have been a junior college player. So there's nothing wrong with being on a junior college trajectory. Plenty of guys go on and play in the big leagues that played D3, D2, JUCO, overlooked their value coming out of high school. So I think a lot of parents aren't aware of a lot of those stories, and they definitely fall victim to the the opportunity to reclass. And there's academies that specifically do that. But I think, like anything, you have to weigh all of your options, and you have to have advice from people that are going to give you additional perspective rather than just, oh, yeah, do this. And now you're in a program and you have us for a year and on to the next thing. So a gap year may be more beneficial than a reclass year, or a JUCO year may be more beneficial than a gap year or being held back. So yeah, it's like anything, you have to have some nuanced consideration of all the options.
Yeah, and I know there was talk about this. I don't know if it's in effect right now with where the junior college years don't count towards your 4 years. I don't know where, I remember hearing something about that was a thing. I don't know where that's gone or if it's actually coming true or whatever. But even if that happens, I mean, that's another I think that's another conversation in itself. Um, that could take away those guys that want to just reclass and they can go to junior college and have those 2 years and it doesn't count towards their 4 year. But then again, like you said, we saw this in COVID where there's so many guys got so many years back and now you got 24, 25-year-old seniors playing against 18-year-olds coming in. So it's just kind of a crazy world on that side. But I think we could probably talk about this even more. But just to kind of sum up, so say you got a kid, say he's from Kersey, Pennsylvania, right? He wants to play at Vanderbilt or he wants to play at LSU, and he's a talented player. What would your top 5 things that he should do? One, to get on their radar or be seen or something like that. Because like we talked about earlier, Lucas Bauer came from back here where I'm from, and he went out to LA to play junior college. And if he didn't do that, he most likely wouldn't have got the opportunities he's going to get out there. So do you think there's a way for kids, in smaller areas, rural? I always struggle with that word. It's really hard for me to say for some reason. Rural. But
Yeah.
what would be like your advice, or do you just not have any, or do you
No,
have
no, good
like
question.
maybe a
So,
top 5 things that they
yeah.
should do?
Yeah, I should have like wrote out some lists on like some of the advice, like the key points, because I mean, there's probably dozens of things that I could think of. Uh, but just to touch on Lucas Bauer, Lucas, 5'11", 190-pound right-handed pitcher, throwing 88 to 91 right now. He has really started to dominate the junior college landscape in Southern California, which is giving him a lot of new opportunities to be seen. His previous outing, he went 6 innings with 14 strikeouts and no runs. His last game, he actually threw a complete game shutout against the number 4 team in the state with 9 strikeouts and only 2 walks and 2 hits. So what he's doing now is giving himself the validity that he can compete in this area. And now he's getting eyes on him that are fresh, where he wasn't in that area before, where he could have within driving distance about 15 D1 or D2 schools that can come see him on a random Wednesday or a Tuesday or just a random weekend that they have the ability to come out. But great job by him, because one of the things that he's really stayed dedicated to is his consistency of training. So, he threw 9 innings and then he's in the facility training that night, doing his recovery, staying on his routine, checking in with his trainers. And I would say that level of commitment is a lot more rare than I thought it was. I thought every athlete that was serious about wanting to play at the next level is going to do a lot of extracurriculars to make sure they're staying ready for it. The reality is you can just beat 90% of guys if you just work hard, have a good attitude, and you stay consistent. And he's by no means the most naturally gifted, physically gifted guy. He's not one of those guys that's 6'6", throwing 95, rolling out of bed, but he has worked his butt off. And I think he's going to go to a D1 that he definitely would not have had coming out of Pennsylvania. Circling back to that question, top 5 things that I could think of off the top of my head. Advice. If you're a high school player trying to get seen, the first thing I'd recommend is just get really good at something. Find out what it is. Know your tools. And obviously everyone knows the 5 tools that we always talk about. So it's, throwing velocity, hitting for power, running, and defense. And then arguably the 6th tool is always on the mental side, the makeup, the baseball IQ, like how much makeup you have on the team does actually have some tangible effect in the game. But that's the first thing. Just get really good at something. Second would be to have some objective data on it to see how much better it's getting, or if it's getting worse, how you can change it. So that's like finding a program like ours. There's a lot of programs that can give you some information. The trick is having someone that can actually integrate it, evaluate it, intervene on it, and change if the direction isn't going favorable for you. So the first 2 things right there for sure. Third would be you need to be consistent at it. You need to have a just ongoing record of this actually being a thing you do, which is going to give a coach or a trainer the ability to make some adjustments based off of what's worked, what hasn't worked, understanding seasonality of an athlete, as well as the logistics that come into play with the season for, travel, nutrition, sleep, school, all the other extracurriculars that things don't necessarily come up on the day to day when you talk about recruiting and development. Fourth, I would say having a plan to actually contact the schools or the type of school that you're interested in. Like, if you don't even know what program you want to go to, it's really hard. There's like over 300 D1 programs, I think. I could be wrong. But at one point we had a list, and I used to show these to parents and go, hey, well, what schools do you want to go to? And if they just start highlighting all of them, you'd be surprised how many they're just like, oh, I've never even heard of these programs. And we're like, oh, great. Well, that might actually be a good school for you because they check these boxes: academic, good weather, private school, whatever they're looking for. It's having a way to actually get in touch with them or understanding what they're looking for. And then fifth, I would say the best advice outside of those things that I could think of would be to focus on your game and enjoy the process. There's a lot of athletes, they try to play recruiting coordinator, they try to play head coach on their team or pitching coach. Like, wait, why did we do this in this situation? Control your controllables. Remember, it's baseball, so you got to have fun. You got to be able to compete. And at the end of the day, things will work out in the way they should if you've been consistent, if you've been putting in the work, and you're just really good. People are going to find you. You don't have to go chase everything. You don't have to go control every scenario or have a parent go talk to the coach why he didn't throw a certain pitch in a situation. But that would be my advice. Those 5 things for sure. If you can just do that, you'll end up having a lot of doors open up that maybe you didn't even expect.
Yeah, I agree with all of those. But number 1, I'd say you probably got to train with us.
There you go.
We're going to give you the best chance.
Number 1,
to
buy
get
Elite
those.
Athlete. Put it on the bottom. Here you go. Go there,
Yeah.
DM us, have a message. That's one of those things where I think a lot of people don't even know we've given so much free advice. We're happy to direct you in the right location. Even if it's not training with us or getting in contact with one of our trainers, we're happy to push you somewhere and go, hey, this is kind of where you need to start. But I think that always circles back to that first thing, is having that objective evaluation first. You need to know, where do you stand? What are you trying to get to? So how do you take a step down the road if you don't even know if this is the right road to go down? But yeah, if you want some free advice, BeimelEliteAthletics.com. Put it down there on the screen, and you can come see us or talk to us, DM us, email us, and it'll probably be me. It'll probably be me talking to you, but happy to do this for any of our guys. It's pretty much what we've specialized in for the past 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll be like, BeimelEliteAthletics.com. Can I help you? Let me transfer you over to
exactly.
Brent Dean. Yeah. I'm Brent's
for our
manager
recruiting
or
program. 1 second.
secretary.
Hey.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. The recruiting department's in the other
that's what makes
office.
it fun. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No
But
doubt.
that's what
I mean,
makes it fun for us, that
it's,
kind of stuff. We love helping guys out, and
yeah.
it's so awesome when you see somebody put so much work, time, and effort in, and their dreams start to come true. Um, and I know one thing that you've done in the past with guys is you'll have them write down like their dream schools, because you never know. You might, if you start to develop and you start to get in that upper echelon of a player that could reach like whatever. We say UCLA, LSU. There's so many great programs out there all over the country. Miami, and we've had guys go to all of them, and it's just one. They start to go like, oh well, I'd really like to go. Even back here, I ask guys, and it's like, well, I'd really like to go to this school and this school, um, and they're just these smaller ones that they think that that's all they can do. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. Is that your dream school, or is that just like where you think you could play right now? Because that's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to give me some schools that are your dream schools. And then it starts to get them in that different mindset where they're like, oh, maybe, oh, that'd be great if I could play there. And maybe it's not going to happen, but also if it's definitely not going to happen if you don't think that it can. So if you start talking about it, you start getting better, and I've watched a lot of kids sign with schools that I feel like were just not where they should have gone, and I don't feel that about everybody. Like, say they go to a D3 or they go to a D2, and that's completely fine as well. Even if you're a great player, it's fine to go to those schools because, you know, you, what are your priorities? You want to go in there and you want to play for 4 years? Then absolutely. Because if you go to a D1, you just sit the bench for 4 years. What's the point of that? So, it's one of those fine lines, and the family's got to make the decision. The players got to make the decision. But I get disappointed sometimes when the mindset is too small. The talent is like way up here, the mindset's down here, and they shortchange themselves. And I'm just like, oh, come on, man. Like, you would have just waited a little bit.
Mhm.
We could have got you somewhere, or could have talked to somebody. So it's just,
Yeah.
there are just those situations kind of all over the board. And that's where it's not easy. It's never easy. Things are always going to pop up. But, as long as I think you're making the decision based on, if you're just following your heart, you're following, what's best for your family. I don't think you can make the wrong decision in that aspect. But all
Yeah.
right, I think,
That's a fair point, man.
yeah, I think we're probably at the limit here. Um, where are we
Yeah.
at?
I got
Over an
so many more
hour?
things to say too. Like, I got so much more that's
Oh,
popping in
go
my head
for it.
now
Go
about
for it.
recruiting. No, no, no. We'll do it. I mean, it's probably way too much longer, but yeah, we can drop it here. I think of just what you were talking about with like the mindset, and it always comes back to this, like you have to believe that you can accomplish what you're working for. And that's a very common thing I have with parents and players when I talk with them. Sometimes they have big dreams, but they have a hard time articulating or just verbalizing like that's where I want to go, because they're like, oh, I don't want to have someone laugh at me or like doubt me. But that ends up being one of the big separators at that power D1 level, which I'm sure you can resonate with going to the big leagues, is you have to have that mindset that you do belong there, that you're there for a reason, that you can contribute there, and not like this walk on eggshells, like imposter syndrome, like it's a new game now and it's a new system and now I'm not ready. But that's where confidence comes into play. And I feel like a lot of athletes very easily can find a strength program. They can go to some random gym, or they go to like a local gym, 24-hour fitness or something, and they work out. And they think, oh, that's going to help me get ready. It's like the easiest thing you could do. You can go find a strength coach anywhere. The baseball side, too, you have to develop. Obviously, if you don't have the skills, no one's ever going to put you on the roster or put you on the field. But one of the things that gets simply overlooked is developing their mental game. And that's such a difficult thing to really have resonate, because most people have never talked about it with them. That's confidence, that's routine, that's just the power of belief that they understand that they can go there. And we've had that with a handful of our athletes. I'll talk to you about some of them because right now I'm having these conversations with some of them. They haven't had those big offers yet, but they've had teams interested, but they still walk around like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. I'm like, you have to think like that's the school I'm going to. And if it isn't that one, well, their loss. They missed out versus you're just begging them for the opportunity. And if you're there, you're lucky to be there. I think
Yeah.
that's a big key. And I mean, we could probably spend a whole hour just on mindset. But when it comes to recruiting, some of these doors never get open because no one's ever knocked for them. I mean, we've had so many of those stories where we just call about someone and all of a sudden they're there. Like
Yep.
I can tell you probably 4 or 5 names off the top of my head. But that circles back to that complacency thing where I've just seen so many guys, we open that door for them, like, okay, now I'm good. Or they get there and they fall back into that same trap of doing whatever that new program does for them, which isn't bad inherently, but it's not necessarily what got them there. And then they regress. And then they miss their next window of getting drafted or being a starter on Friday night or just reaching their level of potential. That's kind of why we hope for them. Um, One of the core things that, we keep touching on is just this is why we love doing this. We love helping our athletes. Um, it's so rewarding to just be a part of their journey. And like you said, it's just never about us. And it's so corny when I see other programs or people or coaches try to take credit for that stuff. When at the end of the day, it's about the players and we want to celebrate them for sure. But we're just a part of their journey for however long they're here. We think we can help them matriculate through every level and get to the big leagues and have success after baseball, in this industry or whatever industry they go to. But when athletes don't have the level of consistency or the buy-in or just the confidence, it's super hard for them to understand that that trajectory is constantly changing on the decisions they're making in real time. So I love it, man. I'm happy we're doing this. I think we could wrap it up here. Otherwise, we'll go down the rabbit hole for another hour. But
Yeah.
yeah, when it comes
I
to
think my
recruiting, man,
battery on my
there's
phone will
there's so
die.
many things that have to get done. Yeah, I'm on like 5%. So I see that. That's why I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
same.
there, lock it in.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
appreciate the time,
Well,
man.
one thing I do
We'll
have to say
continue this
before
again
we get
later.
off.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I do have to say before I get off is um obviously we've been doing this, which usually on Wednesdays, and then I bowl Wednesday nights. And, the first time we did it, the first one we did, I went to the bowling alley after, like later that night, bowled the 300. We did it again the following Wednesday. I went to the bowling alley that night, bowled another 300. So my first two 300s I've ever bowled. And obviously I've only been bowling for like the past 3 years when I moved back here. But it, I do, and then Wednesday we had to move it to today or whatever. But I did not bowl a 300 on Wednesday, and I'm blaming it because we didn't record on Wednesdays. But that's where, like, I think you and I talking about this stuff, it really gets me fired up. It gets me in that positive mindset. Being able to talk about the things that we love to do, the things that we're good at. Um, and you were talking about mindset, like it's easy to get into a mindset like that when you're in like that positive environment, and we want to be able to hold everybody accountable with what they're doing when they train with us, but we also want to provide that kind of atmosphere where they're getting pumped up, and I always say when guys are sitting there like this, I'm like, hey, we're not like insecure teenagers in here. Like, get those shoulders back, get the chest out, we're confident in this place. So just being able to provide that kind of atmosphere, I think benefits as well. But all right, let's wrap it there.
BuyMeliteAthletics.com.
And
Go there, baby.
that's right. That's right. All right, man.
Well,
Till next
go
time.
bowl tonight then. Get a 300 and then
Yeah.
you can lock it in for
No
next week
league,
on
no
Wednesday
league
too.
tonight. I wouldn't. That's another thing is I wouldn't just bowl for the sake of bowling anymore. It's like if I bowled the
Yeah.
300 and it wasn't sanctioned, I'd be like, oh man, I freaking wasted one.
What a waste of reps. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
All
man.
right, I'll cut it right
Well,
here.
good talking with you as always. We'll chat later.